here, y'all. Yes, we are here. I love it. I love it. It's hump day. Yes. Welcome from the battle to the glory. Yes, we are here. Is that too loud for you? That's too loud.
It's you. It's
Oh,
all
that's
you.
me.
That's all you.
I didn't look. I didn't took me a little nap. Came home.
Mm-mm.
Energized like the bunny. Oh,
Clapping the hands.
oh, that's a trigger for you. I can tell you right now.
No, it's what
No,
you
no,
do.
no,
It's just your clap. You be clapping. You be like clap,
that's a
clap.
trigger for you. I know.
Not a
Somebody be in
trigger.
your face. Look, somebody be in your face telling me something. Let's go. Do it right now. You're gonna click, click, click. That's a trigger for you. I know it is. So I clap in your face. Somebody in your face telling me something. Let's go. You gonna like, what? Let's go.
Mm,
Oh, okay. I
yeah.
got some let's go for you.
No.
How was
That's
your
it.
day, T?
It was good. It was actually very productive. I'm happy. I woke up this morning, did some, out of the box things that I wasn't expecting to do, but it happened and I got it done and the ball was rolling after that. So it became a productive day. And I'm so glad about it because these days don't happen often where you get a lot done. You feel like, you accomplish things. So that was my day today and I'm grateful.
Okay. I'm glad. I'm glad it was a productive day for you. Yes. I was on um there's a show. That's what I was doing. Was talking to them. He got an interesting topic over there. Oh, he by the way, he wanted see if you wanted to join on Friday. I'm joining on Friday. They got something good Friday. I know that's your downtime, but I don't know. Maybe you could drop in and because there's some other women up there. Oh my goodness, today's topic he is real juicy. I had to chime in a little bit. Opposite sex friends, right?
Mhm.
Women's submission and what a woman brings to the table. I had to chime in. I had
Mm,
just a little bit. If he's still on what time we finished, I'm going back over there and I'm gonna let him.
okay.
You know what I mean? It was interesting. I was like,
Yeah.
y'all lucky I got my own show. But
Yeah. But we might make this quick. You never know,
oh Lord, what you trying to say?
I mean, I don't
I,
know.
I don't know. It depends
Uh,
on what you say, because this your work. This your work. Let's go. Let's get into it then. Let's get into it. The battle between flesh and spirit. Can you explain that for me? Come on, talk to me now. And before we start, are we talking about personal? Are we just talking about the battle between the two?
I
Um,
think we're gonna go through a lot. We're gonna go through a lot.
okay, let's go.
I
Yeah,
mean,
I'm in,
we
I'm
we
in,
look
I'm in passenger seat right now.
okay. I know we look at when we hear the battle between flesh and spirit as Christians, we look at it as the spirit is God, the flesh is our human sinful nature. So we can kind of represent the fall of man towards selfishness, sin, worldly desires. That's what we look at as flesh, and the spirit is higher. It has the divine God alignment. That's how we look at it. But this, like, when we take that, the biblical part of it, sometimes we miss some things, right? And I like to, say, I like to be broad when I speak because Christianity is one of the latest. It's our modern religion. And Jesus, Yeshua, he went to the East to learn. And that is Hinduism. That's Buddhism. That was his time. There is so much sacred text that we don't have knowledge of. And it comes from before Christianity. And Jesus learned through it. And so what I like to do is, like, put it into a more of like how it can be looked at in different views of religion, like in the Eastern philosophy, mostly Hinduism and Buddhism. They have the flesh as like part of the desires, right? It can be looked at as the same thing as Christians, but it's a difference. But it's a flesh, it's a body, it's the desires, and the spirit is like the true self. It can be like the nature of eternal and pure divine spirit. That's how they see it as well. So it's a lot of similarities, but there's also there's differences. So, so when I'm saying it is like, we need to kind of get into the metaphysics of it when we look at what the flesh and the spirit is really all about. Metaphysically is more of like philosophies and putting all of the traditions of philosophies together. And that has a lot to do with, the body, the world, the cosmos, up in the sky. All these things are factors. But we, as Christians, we take one portion of it, not taking the whole picture. And that is something I wish that we would learn more about. The flesh is what we consider the body, but it's more to it than just the body. It is the system, the way the world is built, how the structure was built for this world. That is our nature of being in the downward. Like, okay, I was going to say downward, but when I think of is it Buddhism? Whenever, chakras, they look at the body as energies, and they have certain energies, and the lower chakras are, from what we do as we're born, we learn through our lower chakra how to be, and to elevate to a higher, which is God-like and God aligned as a higher chakra, is when you become more awakened. And that's the same for Christianity as well. It is like the awakened mind to understand the truth of where we are in this physical body, in this world, and what real flesh is. And not just using the word flesh, but understanding it as it's a physical thing. It is like the body, it's like our prison in a way, because if you think about our body, we have this body, but yet our spirit is stuck in it. Our soul is stuck in the body, and we have to learn how to go in the body and be in the body and try to align the spirit and the soul together. But we as Christians, once again, we take only part of it, not going deeper into the mysticism of history and knowing what flesh truly is. It's a worldly thing. It's it's like what we call a carnal thing, but it is also how we came into this world. This world was meant for us to be in this lower nature, for us to go into a journey to understand and awaken to who we are and who we're meant to be. And that is going closer to the ascension of the spirit and God. And the spirit is always there. It's just waiting for us to wake up. I've said this before. We hear about how Adam and Eve, Adam was put to sleep. And in the Bible, it actually never says anything about him waking up. He was put to sleep. You read it in the Bible, but you don't read in the Bible. And he woke up from his slumber. You don't read that. So it's like it's a metaphor of how we are to be in the body and wake to the spirit. The first will be last and the last will be first, means that the lower nature, which is the flesh, is going to always be first. And the spirit nature, which is God, is going to be last, because we have to remember who we are. I mean, when I think of flesh and spirit, I think of us as human beings. We are human. That is our flesh. And there's more to it than just being human. There's more of our surroundings, the people around us, who we have to be involved with, the consequences, the decisions, things, actions that have a reaction. And we grow in those situations, and that is our flesh. That is our flesh going through it. The spirit is always there, always. But we as people, and because think about how we're infants. Infants are so young, and it takes a long time for them to be able to do things on their own, like walk. That's what I mean. Like, it's awakening. It is a time where you are to be in a place where you will be disabled. When I say disabled, meaning you won't be able to understand truly, because you have to go through a cycle. It is a process of growing. And that is like how the body works when we're infants. You get what I mean?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you think? I've said a lot.
Yes, you did say a lot. So, um, when you say the battle between the flesh and the spirit, um, first we're going to talk about the spirit. The spirit is something that you can activate on the positive level based on the things that you surround yourself with, the people you surround yourself with. Not only that, you got to look at the upbringing of the individual as well. Uh, those are the things that can help activate your spiritual life on a positive note, because it can be very well activated on a negative and an evil spirit as well. Like I said, it's the surrounding, the upbringing, the things that you indulge in. And so that's as an adult. It's the parents' responsibility to make sure that you have the right upbringing that's going to have a great impact on your spiritual life. But the desires of the flesh, um, and we all deal with that. We all tussle with that because the flesh has a desire based on the individual, your surroundings, the flesh, because we all struggle with lust. We all do. You know what I'm saying? And that's a flesh thing. That's not uh, a spirit thing. That's a flesh thing. We all want money. That's a flesh thing. And the reason why it's a flesh thing, far as money goes, is because we have to live. But the level of your income is based on your wants, your needs, and your desire, and how much are you willing to sacrifice so you can have the money you want and do the things that you want. So that's a flesh thing, you know. So you say, you know what? Let me go to school because I want to make a lot of money. I want to live a good life. So now I'm gonna do the necessary things that I'm supposed to do, so I'll be able to do that. See, that's a flesh thing. You know, these are things that come with the flesh. That's why we battle with, because the spirit is something totally different. That's the mind. That's
Hmm.
the mind, right? The mind that's connected to the heart. It's a connection. You understand what I'm saying?
I
Now,
hear you.
like I said, the flesh. That's why it's a battle, because the desires of the flesh depends on the individual. It's like I said, we always talk about the lust. The lust is something that we all suffer, all struggle with. You know what I'm saying? Regardless of, because once you get to the level of saying, this person looks real sexy. Now, what are the thoughts that are going through your head? And where did those thoughts come from? Where are they coming from? Because you see something that is attractive. You see the voluptuous butt, the big breast. What is making you say, that look good? I want some of that. What is that? That's the flesh. But now, if your spiritual mind is not strong enough, guess what? You'll fall to that. I'm just talking about that because that's something big. Because you're in a relationship, you're not in a relationship, if you just open, living your life. Now, what does it do? We're not going to get into soul ties because that's not the title. Is we talking about the battle of the flesh and the spirit. What if you don't have a connection with that spirit, your spiritual life? Guess what? You'll be going out here doing anything because there's no boundaries. There's nothing to govern your thoughts and keep you, safe and sound when it comes down with dealing with the flesh. You see what I'm saying? So that's one reason why it's a battle, because of the desires of the flesh. Look at, we talk about, like, look what we say. yesterday. Laziness kills your ambition. What your spirit is not making you lazy. You know what? I don't feel like going today. I'm gonna relax. Your spirit told you that, or your flesh? I'm asking you.
That's
I'm asking you. Do
you
you
never
think
know. You never really know. A
so? Your
spirit
mind
might be
is
telling you that, yes, the spirit might
your
be telling
spirit.
you, don't go in today.
No, no,
Right?
I said laziness.
Oh,
Yeah,
you said okay.
laziness.
But you used it as laziness, but is it
Yeah,
laziness or is it time for rest? Sometimes, you want to say laziness, you only gave one, instance of not going into work. So that's why I was
no,
confused.
I was saying laziness kills your ambition. So laziness is a mindset. I don't feel like doing it. No motivation. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
I'm good. But at the end of the day, the result is based on what you do, and that's why I said we said laziness. That's a flesh thing. You know what? I don't going to the gym. I don't feel like going because you know what? I don't want that pain. It's hard work. So so first thing you say is I don't feel like doing it. I'm gonna stay home. Focal point. Focus. Kills all that. I don't feel like doing that today. Right?
Hmm.
And that's the battle. Your flesh wants to do certain things that your mind, your spirit is saying no. It's telling you like, all right, you know you can't go to this nightclub, and you know they be carrying in there, carrying those guns. The security is poor, but the women being there, they be rocking. See, oh, yo, what are you gonna do? That's that. Man, I want to see them fine women. Flesh, not the spirit.
But you said earlier something about the spirit is the mind, something like that. Or how do you remember saying what you said about the spirit being the mind or God being the mind or something?
Yeah,
You remember saying it. So even the mind can be ego as well. you know and so I hear you when you said that, but you have to also think of it in a metaphysical way. When I say ego, it's not just taking it as religion. It's basically saying the self in the ego, and the ego mind can be there. The spirit mind, I agree, there is a spirit mind, but there's also an ego mind. And I don't want to call it a devil mind, I don't want to
yeah,
call it anything else, but it is a selfish way of
yeah,
thinking, and
yeah,
we call it ego.
right. Your
Right.
ego kills your growth.
Right. And I mean, a lot of things can kill your growth if you overdo it, but
We talk about ego though. We talk about
mhm,
ego.
we're talking about ego,
Right, right.
and ego is good to have. You must have an ego. Everybody
No,
has an ego. You have to have an ego. You mean your characteristic is based on who you
confidence.
are, is based on your ego. If we look up you want to look that up for me and find the definition of what ego is for me. But
Uh,
ego has everything to do with the self and how you think and how you process, your world and your environment. Everybody's ego is not big. Everybody's ego is not small. Everybody's ego is not aligned and balanced. But ego is there for everybody, for us to learn how to balance and learn how to deal with one another in the world. So, and that's why I was saying the ego can put you in a negative thought process, and it can put you in a good spiritual process, a thought process, but you have to balance it. So when we're talking about flesh in the Christian way of thinking,
I got an ego too. For you.
okay, I'm
Ready?
listening.
In a nutshell, ego refers to one's sense of self, often in the context of how they perceive themselves and their place in the world. It is the I or the self distinguish oneself from others. The ego is the concept explored in the psychological, particular the psychiatric theory. So it's basically, you see what I'm saying? It's all about self. So that's self-centered. You know, that's self-centered. So guess what? It can destroy everything. You only and clearly it said just about how you are in the world. It didn't say nothing else. It's how your perception of what you are in the world. So how can you, if you already have an ego, guess what? When someone's trying to teach you something, guess what? Your ego will not allow you to be humble.
But you're referring to ego as if, it's a bad thing. And I want you to see, no, it's not. Ego has to be a part of us, each and every one of us. That is the self that we identify in. And you can have a big ego and you can have a small ego. You can have a balanced ego, but you have to have an ego. That is who we are. So you read it.
What's confidence?
Confidence is a trait.
So in other words, instead of taking the ego out and say I'm very confident, I don't have. So I'm.
You're still talking about your ego, though.
No,
you can say that because you said I. Remember, you read it. It said the I in the individual.
Right.
So ego is I. Each and every one of us have an I in us. That is what they call ego. Because it's called ego because that's the only word that they came up with, okay? But it is the I in each every person that lives in this world. Everybody has an I am inside of them, right? And we could say that that's an ego, but it is basically the spiritual nature and the flesh nature. In the spiritual nature can always be risen and brought to a person's life more profound than the flesh nature. And that's what I'm referring to. The self is the two, parts of us, the good, the bad, the ugly, the cute too. But the point is that it has to have the balance of both sides. That's the reason why Jesus spoke to the enemy, the devil. He was always present. He had to speak to him. It is acknowledging the fact that the enemy is there. We look at the Christ-like way, but we know enemy is right there. And we have to learn how to balance it. And that's the same thing for ego, because that is the I in us. Who you are and how you speak is your ego. How I am and how I speak is my ego, right? You get
confidence.
Me? It's not confidence what we're talking about. When you say confidence, I'm going to say, oh, I'm confident enough to talk to you right now about this. That's what confidence is.
Yeah.
That's confidence. If I were to say, I'm not confident enough to talk to you right now, then you would know my confidence is not there. But that's confidence. You are basically saying your way of being, when you say confidence.
Look, listen what Ronnie said.
Rodney.
He said, can you see it?
Yeah.
A person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. My relationship with God boosts my ego.
Okay. I like that. But it is a self. It is self.
But you got to remember, he said boost his ego. Listen, God doesn't want you to have an ego.
Oh, that's not true. Why do you keep saying that?
Because guess what? You want, when you're doing something, you want other people to say, oh my goodness, you're doing something great. And guess what? You know what that does? That increases your confidence, but not only your confidence, like he said, your self-esteem. So I don't have to go and say, you know what, I'm great. I got a lot of money. I got a wife. I don't have to say that. And that's where your ego comes in. Listen, I don't have to stick my chest out and say, you know what, I'm great. And because of God, because I'm a child of God, I'm great. No, you have to let other people, because guess what? With your ego, depending on how you're looking at the ego, guess what? That level of your ego, how do you get there? How do you get to that place of saying your ego is too good, it's too high? But your self-esteem, it shows your character, it shows your personality, it shows who you are. And guess what? You don't have to say who you are, because people will say it for you. And so my ego will not be that big because I want to be humble. You know what I'm saying? You can't have no ego and be humble at the same time, because guess what? You're going out of the way and saying, I'm great. I don't go around saying I'm a great chef. I let other people, my work speak for itself. So
Mhm.
if I was to walk around and say, you know what, I'm a great chef. No, guess what? And I'm not, that tarnishes my image, that tarnishes who I am. Now I'm looking like self-centered because that's my ego. I'm like, yo, I'm the best chef. You can't beat me.
But I said you have to have it balanced. Everything has to be balanced. You know, you have an ego, you will have an ego. The ego has been put down like, you know, it is so self-centered and arrogant and
Yeah,
prideful. And that
absolutely.
is that is something that is more extreme than it should be if it's unbalanced. That's what I'm trying to say. Too much of it. It's like you can't have too much ego. And you know, that's what makes a big prideful person. But the I am, the ego is like, you know, saying the I am. Okay, let me say it like this. The ego says I am what I have, what I do, and what others think of me. That's what ego is, right? You agree with that? That's like it, but the spirit is like I am who I am. I am that I am. That is what spirit is.
All right.
Ego puts material stuff onto it. So we'll say that. Or how about that? Does that sound
Okay.
okay with you?
But
Okay.
but I just want to, because Rodney's saying something. Just listen to this, Lady T, because I don't think you really listen. I don't think Ronnie really listened to this. Just listen to this. You mean to tell me what I'm about to read is not selfish? Look, one sense of self often in context of how the individual, perceives themselves. Listen to that. That's the ego. It says one's, that means how you perceive yourself. You, you, that's how you perceive yourself. You, not the world, you. And guess what? Because you perceive yourself that way, guess what? Somebody else may not. So when you going around saying this is who I am, they say, well, that's not true. That's not what you show. That's not what you say. So it's all based on what you perceive to be. So so in other words, you say, you know what? I'm a two. That's I'm just throwing it out there. I'm a two. That's how you perceive yourself. But somebody might say, she said she a two. She ain't no two. She a dime. She a dime. That's how you. So in other words, so your perception of yourself has to be broadcast. Has to be just, this is who I am, and that's what it's gonna be. That's selfish. It
It's
shows you right there, one self, what you perceive yourself to be. Why you got to tell me what you perceive yourself to be?
okay. An unhealthy ego is what happens sometimes. Okay. You keep talking about unhealthy ego. Do you agree that everybody has an ego? Yes or no?
No,
Why?
because they
So
can have confidence. Their self-esteem can
okay.
be very high
Okay.
because they
Keep
believe
saying
in themselves.
confidence, but
Yeah,
confidence is not a form that is considered to be equal to what we're talking about the ego. And I'm trying to think of the
you
right
have an
word.
ego.
I'm sorry.
You have an ego.
Of course, everybody does. That's what I said. Everybody in this world has an ego. It is the I, self, in each and every one of us. It is
Well,
the ego.
I have learned how to keep myself humble. That's
I
why.
understand, but
Right.
that's what I've been
So
saying
my
all
my
along.
ego my ego is not too high.
Okay, but that's what I have been saying. It is about a balance. So a healthy ego is like it knows its value. It doesn't have to seek superiority. It serves the higher self. That is a healthy ego. An inflated ego, it needs improvement. It needs to improve, or no, I'm sorry, it needs to like kind of dominate, like a inflated. It's a dominate. You know, you got to be right. You gain recognition through an inflated ego. You got to prove yourself. yourself, that's an inflated ego. That's what you've been talking about. Now, a crushed, like a person that has a crushed ego, they feel inferior, unworthy, invisible. Um, I just, there's always types of egos, there's levels to egos, right? And that's what I said. It has to be balanced. And a balanced, healthy ego doesn't like seek the superiority, doesn't seek it. It serves the higher self. The higher self is spirit. Okay. And that's why I said ego everybody has, because it is the I that we, look at ourselves and say, this is who I am, or I am to the world, and, in material look. But the spirit is the I am that I am. It is all knowing and everything else. It's nothing in between.
So
Right.
let me ask you a question there real quick. I was listening to what you were saying. So, Lady T, watch this. It just came to me just like this. I want to show you something. The ego is spiritual or is something flesh?
I think that the ego is both. The reason why is because if you, I'll say it like this. I've grown to understand the ego more as flesh because of what we say the ego is. But I look at it as it is a flesh just because of, that is our self. Our God probably, I would say, knows about our ego, right? And I think God has a hand in the ego as well. So I'm not going to say it's not with God, like it's not a part of God, because God is in everything. And so I can't separate it to say that spirit, the Holy Spirit, the Holy Divine Spirit is not within ego, because everything that has breath, that anything about us, God is there. There's no separation. So that's why I say it that way.
So is it a spiritual thing? Or
I say it's both. Again, I say it's both. There's no like separation to say it's not with God as well. Like it's not spirit as well, because it can have a healthy ego where the ego or the self serves the higher self. Think of, when I say self, I'm speaking of ego, but I'm saying the self, a person, a self. The person is knowing how to check their ego and balance it in a way where it's not so inflated or, crushed, but it's healthy, and it goes into a healthy way of living, and it serves. And that is a main word. It serves. And to serve means you are not feeding the flesh inside of you. You're serving outside of the flesh, which is higher thinking.
Give me an example of anybody that you know has an ego and they're humble.
That's a lot of people. There's
Can
many
you
people
name
I've
them,
met.
please?
I don't know. I'm not going to name their names, but I know a lot of people that have egos, because I said everybody has an ego, and there's humility in them.
All right, so
It's basically,
I look at any famous person you know? Any?
No, I don't know famous people. Sorry, I don't hang out with famous people. How would I know them?
Any biblical people you know?
Man, I mean, off the top of my head, I would really have to think. But let me just get my thoughts out on this. Okay, you're asking me questions that
I'm supposed to. Yes.
Yeah, but these questions, like, do you know the person? Do you know the name of the person?
I need an answer. I need a reference.
I'm sorry, I
or
can't.
What you?
It'll come eventually. But off the top of my head like that, no, I just can't. But Job.
Did Jesus have an ego?
Job.
He had an ego.
He had humility. And
yes,
he had
I said ego, not humility.
Why you keep disregarding what I keep saying? I said every single person that comes in this world has an ego. Stop disregarding that. I keep saying that.
I just want to know it. Can you give me an example?
I just did. I said Job.
He had an ego.
Every single person that comes into this world, I said, has an ego, because you read it, and read it again. Every person, put it into the thing. Go put it on Google. Say, does every person have an ego? And just see what it says. Just look at it, read it, just see what it says. I just want you to see it. But
I'm ready for you. Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
But humility is, it's not really thinking less of yourself, honestly. It just means you are thinking of yourself less. You're not thinking more of yourself, you're thinking more of others and less of yourself. So that's what humility in your ego, with your ego, is all about, the balance of how you think of yourself and how you think of what I'll call others. Because this is a serving. It is a knowing that you got to get out of yourself and get into a way of thinking and behaving that helps you, but also can help another. Right? As a servant, or God, we say it's a higher self. You serve the higher self, meaning that it's a spirit. And so you do less things about what you desire, and then you want to do more things that are more aligned with God and the spirit of God. And then you become different, where you become more humble, and humility sits into your soul and your spirit, and you become less of an ego, big ego, inflated ego.
Hey, Lady T, what does meekness mean?
Meekness.
Hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
please.
What
Can
is
what?
meekness?
Yes, can what that
We're
mean?
gonna have to look that one up.
Yeah,
So
look that up for me.
yeah, well,
Thank you. Appreciate it.
yep.
I love your earrings.
Thanks. I'm trying.
I love the way your hair is just dangling.
Yeah. Okay, meekness.
Yeah.
It says the quality or state of being meek. Okay. A mild, moderate, humble, or submissive quality. And meek is enduring injury with patience without resentment. That is meekness. That is meek. It is deficient in spirit and courage, submissive, not violent or strong, moderate. So it's kind of like the same as humility, right? But humility is more when you are, I don't know the right words, how I would say this. Humility is the action, but I guess meekness is the action as well, when
Yeah,
you're
yeah. I
actually
just wanted you to
doing.
read it. Yeah, that's
Okay.
what it is.
Yeah.
Humble.
So basically you're checking your flesh or your ego, and you are learning to pay attention to your flesh and your ego, and not be so inflated in your flesh and ego. And that brings you to humility. You got to take baby steps in everything, because like I said, we came in this world as people that are infants that could not walk until months and years later, possibly sometimes. There's a gradual process of our growth, of our evolution to become a better human being. And that is not something that happens quickly, it takes time. So humility happens when the person can learn to lessen their inflated ego, and stop going into the flesh way. We talk about flesh a lot when it comes to Christianity, and we talk about lust and all of the sinful natures and pride and things like that. But I think that we have to say it differently. To we are dealing with different type of, I'll say, children in this world. The children that are coming up in this world now, they don't speak the same language that our parents spoke. And I think you would agree with me. And so that's why I say we have to learn how to speak in a way that we know religion is, we believe our religion, but there's a way that you have to, be basic sometimes when you speak. When we say lust, we don't have to say lust. Go deeper in lust, about the details of what lust could look like. When we give, no, we don't have to say lust. Just say just what it is in a detailed way, so that they fully understand. Because you use one word, lust, and it has so many variations and meanings, you're really not getting your point across to people. So that's why I feel like we have to do more or better. And this is for me too. This is why I do what I do right now with you, is communicating, how we communicate, how we speak to one another, how we say things, because we need to let the light shine more and more through our words, because words have power. We know this. And our words are not hitting the light bulb in other people as often as we should be as Christians. I'm sorry. That's how I feel.
Sometimes actions speak louder than words.
Yeah, but your actions might not be seen. Always remember, you're never seen all the time by everybody.
Yeah, you're
So,
right. That's why
right,
the
the
little
word.
bit of time you do, your actions have to be on point as well too. You know that shows your character, that shows your personality. So that's important. But I wanted to go back to what you said earlier. Just I had gave one, two, three, four, six ideas of things that can destroy you, right? And I said this yesterday. Ego kills your growth. And I wonder why they say ego kills your growth. I
Mm.
wonder why. I,
I
I,
think that they
I
say it wrong.
no, because
Yeah,
guess what?
unhealthy ego.
Listen, your ego can very well destroy. What's up? Huh? All right. Your ego can very well destroy your growth because you know what? It clouds your thinking. It clouds you to be able to receive something else that's going to make you better.
Okay, I will say unchecked and unhealthy ego should be put before that. That's why I say the words in a way where you put the adjectives or adverbs or whatever action word to make a person understand. It has to be known that it is unhealthy and unchecked ego that can kill, that can stunt the growth. I agree with you, but it has to be that part where it's unhealthy, where it might be inflated. It might be,
So
a
you
hurt ego. Huh?
so you saying you have an ego, right? Explain to us your ego then.
Mm,
What's your
mm,
ego? How
mm.
how would you explain your ego? I want
Oh
to hear this,
God.
please. Yes,
Oh
please
yes,
tell
I
us.
will have no problem telling it.
Yes, please,
I
because
got
I
a
want to
tickle in
hear
my
this.
throat. I got a little tickle in my throat, but I'm gonna try my best.
Stop playing with me, guys.
Okay, my ego
Mm.
has
Oh yes,
been known.
this is juicy. I
My
want to hear
ego
this. Mhm.
has been known to be inflated. I have had a big ego. I've had a crushed ego, and I'm learning to have a healthy ego. My ego was more inflated because of my upbringing. My upbringing, I've been blessed, and I have confidence, and I stand strong, and all the big time, big shot, big call. I'm one of those types, right? And that big ego about me, I didn't, go out and say I got a big ego. I'm out here, wanting attention. That's not my way. My ego actually is very quiet, but if you talk to me and you really talk to me, you'll see my big ego, right? You get what I mean? Like I have a confidence in me that, oh, she got a big ego, but I don't voice it to people. I don't put my business to say this is who I am. I'm very quiet. I keep to myself. So that's a part of me that I don't feel like I overdo it. I don't have to prove myself. I don't have to dominate. I've never been that type. I don't always have to be right. I don't have to gain recognition. Like I don't, that's like a big ego. And I never really been that type of person, but I have an ego because of my confidence. So now when I say I have a big ego, it's just because if you and I having a one-on-one, I'm gonna show you my confidence. And this looks like a big ego. You agree?
I'm just trying to figure out why you keep using that word confidence.
Oh my goodness, because you
I'm just
brought
trying to
it up.
figure,
You brought
huh?
it up, dude. Like you brought it up. Okay, you got that
I
word
said
out
explain.
there.
No, I said explain your ego.
My
Your ego.
ego
Don't
is
use the word confidence. Say,
okay, we
yep,
won't use the
explain.
word
Yeah,
confidence.
yeah.
Okay. I know my value. Okay. My value. Now I have a healthy ego. I feel like I'm going towards the healthy ego. I know my value. I don't seek, to do anything but to serve my higher self within me and the higher self of God and the world and the people and what the Bible is a good way of learning how to be a person in this world. And I serve the word of truth, of the word of love. And so that is my healthy ego. But I do have an inflated ego. It is still in me, but I try to check it and, keep it balanced. My, inflated ego, I like to pop my collar sometimes. I like pop it, I pop my collar sometimes. And then y'all might look at that like, oh, she got a big ego. Here she go.
Yeah,
But
yes.
well, I'm not going to use the
But
C word.
but listen to what you just said. You just said I gotta check. So obviously your ego can hinder you. You gotta. That's why you said you gotta check it. If your ego you gotta check. That means guess what? You gotta come down. You gotta be humble. Come down. If you gotta check it, that means it's
Everybody
putting
is
you in
supposed
a
to check
place.
it.
It's putting you in a place that you shouldn't be. And so when you checking it, you humbling yourself. You say, you know
Everybody
what?
must check their ego, though. That is a daily thing that we should be doing. Everybody is to check their ego. To have a healthy ego means that you keep it in balance.
So that's why.
Everybody must do
Right.
it.
I mean,
Okay.
well, me, I look.
Everybody
I don't
do.
expect. I just do what I'm supposed to do, and and strive for perfection. When I make a mistake, somebody bring it to my attention, I'll be like, all right, let me fix this. Like I give you an example. See, look, I didn't say anything. I didn't get upset. I didn't get mad or anything. Right. So at work, I'm gonna give you an example. You, I had to be humble. Right. All right. So I'm making food for the whole hotel, right? I'm cooking for the whole all the employees and everything, right? So I messed up. Now using a kettle is a little different. That's a big machine that I make rice in. So the rice didn't come out right. So you know, some people was laughing or whatever. So I changed it out and I gave them fries or whatever, right? So they was like, oh, he messed up on the rice. So people was coming to me, oh, well, you got to do it like this. I didn't get upset. I was like, okay, I listen. I it wasn't me, it was the machinery. You know what I'm saying? It just didn't work out right. So I was like, okay. But my thing is, I brought that to the light is to show you that guess what? I could have got upset and been like, yo, who you telling me? You man, you can't tell me nothing. You got what I'm saying? But I was open. I was like, all right, go ahead. If that's what you want to explain to me, if you feel like you want to tell me this, go ahead. I let them explain it and say nothing and didn't get upset. You know what I'm saying? And
And
and that's because of my humility. That's because I was humble. I was like, you know what? Okay, that's what you feel like. You want to express to me? Go ahead, cool.
And I think it's also a discipline that you had as well. You put your discipline in, to, know when to not speak. You
That's it.
put discipline. Yeah.
That's
And
it.
and that's another thing. We're not here to destroy our ego. We are here to discipline it and purify it. And that is what makes it a healthy ego, to become higher in, serving the higher self, the divine self, the God self. That is how we purify. We discipline it and we purify it. And that is what not destroying the ego, but it is a balance of the ego. And that is what we fleshly are to do as well. In our flesh, in Christianity, we say the flesh, the lust, the greed, the pride, all those things that each and every one of us as human beings go through, we must learn how to discipline it and purify these ways and behaviors to become aligned with God, with the Holy Spirit. It's all about, you gave a great example, but you also know your ego's still there. It wasn't destroyed. It was just disciplined. It was put in a place
It,
where
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, G.
it was put in a place where you allowed your higher mind to, take the control and just wait and not say nothing and be abrupt or be rude. You did that lower ego part of us, right? You didn't let that happen because you disciplined yourself. And that happens gradually for everybody. We all have a process that some are slower and some are faster than others, but that's a process for each and every one of us that we go through in this world.
What I was going to say to you is, here's another thing too. We talking about, the battle between the flesh and the spirit, right? Here's another thing. I'm a gamer too, right? I play the game, and I got a couple of friends that I play with on a regular basis, right? I'm gonna show you something. You might seem it as simple and childish, but it's not. Is that even though I'm better than some people, I don't just be like, I'm better than you. We might joke around, but I don't just boast and brag because I'm better than a person, or I do something better. I just, I talk a little trash or whatever, and I keep it, I keep it, respectful. And I don't need to say, yeah, I'm better than you. I might joke around, but it deep down inside of me, I know it's not right to do that. You see, and the reason why I'm bringing that up, something simple, is because that's the battle of the flesh and the battle of the spirit. Because my spirit is letting me know that's not good to do, because I don't want to hurt nobody's feelings. I don't want to make them feel bad. So it's not feasible for me to talk like that. And so, when you look like that, the flesh want you to boast and want you to brag, but your spirit is tussling with you, because it's not good, it's not healthy to brag and boast. So we talk about the battle of the spirit and the flesh. The flesh wants you to, yeah, what's up? Right? Want to brag. But your spirit, man, once you get to that level, is going to say, it's not, you don't need to do all that. It's your somebody bigging you up is going to come. You don't need to do that. You don't got to flex. When I was younger, right? Battle of the spirit and the flesh. When I was young and I was slimmer, I go to the gym, I'll be swole. I'll be coming out of the gym like this. And it's like a form of bragging, because guess what? I want to show all my cuts and everything. You know what I'm saying? But as you get older, you got to be humble. You don't need to do all that. You going in there for one objective and coming out, and boom, that's it. You know what I'm saying? So, that's growth. And you can't grow when you got that big ego. You like coming out looking like this. Next thing you know, somebody got to put a pin in you. Gotta knock that ego down. Gotta come down.
But I was thinking about your question about my ego, and so my ego more than when I was young, and I still think about it sometimes. But I live this way. I know who I am, but I also know I'm not better than anyone else.
Right. Yeah.
So and that stays in my mind all the time. That's my ego. That is truly my base of my ego. I know who I am, but I'm not better than anybody else. And that is what is healthy, right? You would agree if you listen to the statement, you're like, okay, you know that you're not better than nobody else, right? I'm not going to put myself higher than nobody else. I know who I am, though. That's a healthy ego. And that right there is like, it can be a battle if we can't say that, we can't feel that, but if you have an inflated ego, it's a battle. You're going to have a battle. You're going to have a battle to get to the spirit part of, we are in the flesh. We all come into this world fleshly. The fleshly nature is all coming, like when you come into this world as a baby, and when you graduate to come to higher and higher spiritual realms, it is, lessening the flesh, and your ego and yourself, it starts to kind of fade into a little bit of a background. Jesus, he washed his disciples' feet. That was, at the time, was a very big and deep act of humility. And I look at myself and I'm like, I have a hard time washing people's feet. I'm like, I don't know if I can wash people's feet, but that's part of my growth as well.
You know what? Oh, I'm glad you just said that. And see, I thank God, seriously, I thank God for my family, like my grandparents. You know why? Because when you was growing up, when you commune, did you wash people's feet?
Oh yeah, they still do it in the churches. Yep.
And you know what it does? It puts you in, and that's why. And I like that. A lot of churches don't do that no more. You know why? Because they don't practice that. Even though my grandmother had a small church, but you know what it taught me? And I'm serious. Even in the midst of me out there living just a whole crazy life, it taught me humility. I didn't have to. And I'm being serious. I didn't look at their feet. Some people like, it was like, it wasn't like, look, it wasn't like, you go to get your feet done and then massaging your feet. No, it wasn't that. What it was they hold their foot up. You take the water, then you take the towel. You never touch their feet with your bare hands. We didn't have to put no gloves on. Wash their feet, towel them up. Boom, we got the next person. But you know how that you gotta be humble to be able to do that. You had to be, because some people feet stink. But guess what? We never had those examples, because there were people who were, taking care of themselves. The personal hygiene was good. When you got that, you got a big audience, that's something different, because you're gonna have all different type. But I'm just saying, in the small congregation, we was able to do that. But for me as the individual, it taught me how to be humble. That was part of my, what I'm saying, that was part of my, my trials and tribulation of learning how to be humble. And then, it carried on. That's how I am the man I am today. You know what I'm saying? Not perfect, just working, always a work in progress. But see, and I'm glad you said that, because that was part of my humility. You know what I'm saying? That was because it taught me that I can go down there and wash a man's feet. We watched the men's feet, the women watched the women's feet. And so we had a set out time to do that. You know what I'm saying? And it showed a lot. Yeah, and it shows a lot. It taught me a lot. And so here I am today, you know what I'm saying, with humility.
I think that if I were to be put in a position to do it now, I would do it, because I've learned. So one thing I know about myself and my ego, and what I've said a lot, is I work hard. I'm proud of my accomplishments, but I know I didn't do it alone, and I'm still learning. Right. I am still learning how to, put my ego and my humility to work together. And washing the feet is going to be my test in life,
Of
I think.
course.
Yeah, because I know that was something difficult for me. And, I'm gradually getting into a place to help, with the feet. The reason why I have had an issue with this is because I just never really been a foot person. So this was just me. But it's not. Well, let me just say this. It's not that. It's more, I need to get out of that, that thought. And what you were saying about how you don't touch the feet, you just basically, well, back in Jesus' day, I really think that they put their hands on the feet and really gave it a clean, because they did, I think that is very true.
Look, they probably, look.
He said wash his feet.
Yeah, look, I'm washing his feet.
No, I don't think that was the case back in Jesus' time. I'm sorry.
Then again, we don't know. And
right.
You got to remember, they wore sandals and
yes, and so their feet were dusty and dirty, right? So I feel like they had to put their hands to, So I know it's more of me getting in the big ego, inflated ego type thing. So that's a part of my humility, is that I know I'm learning. I'm not doing this all on my own, and it doesn't matter what I've done. I still am learning, and I need to grow in a lot of things. So, but yeah, I understand what you're saying.
But and also T, I know you don't. This is all relevant, and so we talk about how we wanted to encourage people to change their minds and their perspective, right? T, you gotta have to start looking at some of the stuff that's going on in the world.
I do.
You got to dib and dab in a little bit
do.
Of social media.
I definitely do. Yeah.
All right. So do you know who? Let me see if you know who this person is. Joy Teller.
No, you talk about people. No, I will not know names. Sorry.
All right. See, that's and because what we talk about over here, and then when you hear what some people say, now they on a different caliber than we are. They're in the spotlight. They're in California. So one girl, she's a sports
announcer,
analysis for
sports.
Okay. Yeah. And then the other girl, I don't really know her. But the other guy, he was a former basketball player. So it was the three of them. And you know what she said? She said she don't. She's not attracted to religious men. Right? Now, mind you, she said she pray and she believe in God, but when a man comes to her with religion, she like it's a no-brainer. It's like she not interested at all, right? And when I was listening to her, I was like, wow. And I don't think she understands the religion part. But she said she was brought up in a Baptist church, right? But it's not about the religion. It's about the relationship. And see, some people get the religion part and the relationship miscrewed. You know what I'm saying? And the religion part is just the structure of the denomination. It's their order of how they do things and their place of worship. Because everybody has a different way of doing things. You know, we talk about Seventh-day Adventists, we talk about Pentecostal, we talk about Baptist, we talk about Catholic, we talk about Islam. They do things differently. And so that's the structure of their faith. And so with that being said, she just eliminate a man with any religion, period. And I understand what she was saying, like if they bring that up, but guess what? There are some men that are just holy and righteous, and they want to live a righteous life. And so I feel like she missed an opportunity to find the right guy for her. If that's what she said she's not interested in, yeah, she ain't gonna have what God had for her. She may be single for the rest of her life. She ain't no bad woman. She ain't no bad looking woman either. But it's just crazy how just people dismiss the religion. Man is messed up. So man has destroyed some of the religion part. Man, period. So you got to know what you're looking for. You got to know what is good for your soul and your spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? That's it. You got to find that. You got to find the way.
And that's her way, though. You know, she said her way. It was her way.
But yeah. but then you got to listen to some of her stories, though. You know, some of the things that she's been through. Why? It's the choices that you made as the individual. It's the choices that you made. You want the best for you, but guess what? You're not making the best choices. You're not just. I know a little bit about her story, though. That's because of the choices she made. Her decision making was poor, and so the result was poor. You know what I'm saying? and so see, God don't want to see you unsuccessful. He wants to see you successful, and so He gives you the tools that you need so you'll be able to make better choices. But sometimes we refuse to do that.
I mean, everybody has free will, right?
Of course. You know that.
But okay, so let's get back to the ego real quick.
Yeah.
Because you know, I say ego, and when I say ego, I'm saying it because I want it to be known that when I'm referring to ego, I'm saying flesh. Okay. It's just that I want to speak in a way where all people possibly will understand me, because we know ego very well. But I think ego it can, you know, hurt us when we have a dishonest or resist honest self-reflection. That is a big thing. Big egos are not able to look at themselves in a self-awareness type of way. It kind of blocks it. And so it defends their image. Like, you will know a unhealthy ego. It will defend the image, even if it's false and broken. It just basically hates the fact that, you know, I will say it thrives on pride. That's what it is. An unhealthy ego thrives on pride. So I feel like when we're talking about having the battle between flesh and spirit, we're basically saying the battle between ourselves. We're saying the battle with us in ourself to be able to, you know, say, I am the ego part. I am me, where I have that free will to make the choices that I make. But I also know I can't do this alone. God is there. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. I have to respect it. And, you know, it doesn't blame. It doesn't, you know, attack. It doesn't, you know, it just comes for correction. That is a healthy ego. But people, you know, look at it in a way where I think as Christians, we talk so much about flesh that we're not able to say the things that can help the flesh and help the mind. Because everything, you know, we're talking about is, in my opinion, what I want to do is to help. But how can you help somebody that doesn't understand your language? And so that's why I say about my words, the words that I use, I am trying to talk to an audience that is broad, that is not about, religion. It's not about, how would I say this? It's not about a group or behavior way of thinking or a doctrine or a dogma. It is about spiritual truths. What we live in this world, we understand certain things. And when we speak plainly and simply to those that want understanding, we connect. And I like the title of the flesh, but I had to say it over and over, the ego, because I want to speak to others. I want to not just speak to Christian people. I want to speak to a lot of people that can understand me and know what I'm saying, because it is a checking of the balance. We're not here to destroy our ego. We are to align it and go into the direction of ascension. Ascension is from the bottom to the top. And the bottom is where we are at our base and our lower. But when we go up to the top, we are at our higher self. And you have to have the ego checked all the time, every day.
So, Lady T, when you elevate, there's certain, just when you reach a certain altitude, there are certain things that has to fall off. There are certain things that have to come down, and you cannot. So ego is one of those things. When you start to elevate, you can't have an ego when you start to elevate, because guess what? You have to be humble. You have to have humility. You have to have compassion. You have to have empathy. And so some of those things, like when you reach that certain altitude, that ego has to drop off, because you have to not be prideful. And that's why one of the things that God talk about is about pride. Pride is part of an ego. That's a characteristic of the ego, being prideful. That's a characteristic of the ego, being proudful. And so those are some of those characteristics have to fall off so you can begin to elevate, because there are going to be things that you're not going to be able to say and do because of your humility, because of you being humble. And so when your ego gets too much, too great, guess what? It has to fall down. It's like shingles. Got to come off. You understand me? And so that's why the ego is so important, to make sure you regulate it.
But sometimes it might not fall off.
It doesn't fall off, and
it needs to be tamed.
That's why I said when you start to, and that's why I said earlier, ego kills your growth. Is because guess what?
Unhealthy. Unhealthy ego.
Even if it's unhealthy, it's still.
You're just saying ego, and you're not really saying that it has to. It's like ego is going to be there. You will always have ego, and if it's unhealthy, that's what stunts your growth. You won't be unhealthy. Unhealthy ego. I want that word put on there. Some word that describes it.
Look, you want it to be healthy, but in a healthy ego way, it's got to be your confidence. Your confidence has to be strong. You're a confident woman, so you're strong. So guess what? You don't need an ego. You already know.
I got an ego though, but the ego is there. Ego is there.
All right, so look, I want you to understand. You saying your ego is there, but guess what? If you're confident, you don't need to say you have an ego.
Okay, there it is. Okay, thank you. So confidence comes from ego. Think about that. Think about it. Yep. That's exactly what I just said. Confidence comes from ego. Think about it. Just think about what I just said. Just let it sit for a moment. Let me talk a little bit more. Yep. Let me talk a little bit more. Let that sit in right in your mind. Okay. Let it marinate. Confidence, and I want to get the words, like the definition of it. But confidence is basically like the act. It's an act of being. It is, you can be fearful, and that's an act. It is either you're going to be confident or you're going to be fearful, right? And I'm trying to find it. It's a feeling of consciousness of one's power and one's circumstances. So it's considered a feeling, but it comes from the self, and the self is the ego that we're referring to. And that's where confidence comes from. But like I've been saying over and over, I check my ego as much as I can. I try to be aligned with my ego and, tame my ego. I will say that. I have to set boundaries for my ego. There's certain things you can do for a healthy ego, but ego is going to be there. And let's say unhealthy or inflated ego, or what's the other one I said? Inflated. It's healthy, inflated, and there's one I said another one earlier, but I can't think of it. But there's types of ego that can hurt us and can be good for us. And we just need to know how to check it. Learn how to know what our issues are within us, see ourselves, to know that we are not perfect. We don't know everything. We have to depend on other people. We have to depend on God. The universe will provide. The universe will show us. The universe will open up doors. I say God and universe, and I say it interchangeably, because that is what it is. It is knowing the spirit. And when you are able to, sit back, and, get away from fears and, inflated egos and things like that, you can get closer to spirit, and it won't be such a battle. But I mean, we had these conversations, and honestly, I'm like, sometimes I feel like, we have growth in our conversations, because we've had this conversation before about the ego and the battle with flesh and spirit. But I feel like, there's growth. I'll say there's growth just because of the fact that we talk more. You and I, we ask more questions about it. Like, your mind is starting to, turn. The wheels are turning. I see them turning. I see your mind turning. So that's a good thing. But yeah, that was a good topic. It was all right.
It's all right.
It was all right.
Well, we have more for you on next week.
Oh, it's going to be something.
Yes, it is going to be something. Are you going to did you read the message from Rodney? I'm not talking about him. He texted you about Memorial Day weekend.
Oh yes, I'm
let me know.
I'm gonna Rodney, what's up, man? Where you at? I'm going to have to look at something, because I did make a commitment. So I'm going to look into it. So
all right.
But yeah.
Well, this was a nice conversation, nice talking with you guys. But we're going to end this session, and we will be back with you guys next week. Have a blessed weekend and enjoy the rest of your week. Good evening.
Bye-bye.